Hello, friends of the front porch. Doug here. It is August 1st, and that means I'm on a much needed summer vacation. But since I didn't want to let you guys go a month without some quality front porch content, I decided to dip into the archives and choose my favorite interview from 2024 from last year. And after looking at all of the interviews that we did last year, the one that really stuck out to me was episode 91, which aired on the 1st of September. And that was an interview with a colleague of mine by the name of Tyler Barth. Tyler is currently in principal of one of the elementary schools in the school district that I work in. One of the reasons I really enjoyed this episode was because I think Tyler offers us a way at looking at the world that I wish more people did. So while I am, whatever I'm doing on vacation, relaxing somewhere, probably not on the beach because you guys know I'm not a big beach person, but wherever I am, trust me, I'm thinking of all of you, and I hope that you guys are having a restful and relaxing summer as well. Enjoy a replay of episode 91 from last year, my interview with Tyler Barth. And no worries, next month on September 1st, I'll have a brand new interview coming to you guys wherever you get your podcasts from. So enjoy this throwback episode to 2024, episode 91, my interview with Tyler Barth, and I'll see you all next month right here on the front porch. Singing Dutchman Productions. Hello and welcome to Doug's Front Porch, a podcast where I get to sit down with friends, old and new, and have honest conversations. Today I welcome colleague and friend and someone that I would like to get to know a lot better. We're going to work on that today. Tyler Barth to the front porch. Welcome, Tyler.
Hello, Doug. Thank you for having me. I look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I do too. I really, really do. So I always start every episode the same way and allow my audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us about where Tyler grew up. What was your childhood like? What kind of things were you into? Were you a music kid? Were you a sports kid? Siblings? Tell us what your parents did. Let us get to know young Tyler quickly.
Young Tyler. Young Tyler is probably not as fascinating as a young Sheldon, but regardless, I had a wonderful childhood. I was born and raised in Swissdale. It's just outside of Lock Haven, across the river. My parents, Bob and Elaine Barth, both very active in their community, both educators. So they're my parents. I'm blessed to still have them in my life. They're still living and very active now in my children's lives. But yeah, so I was born and raised in Swissdale. My grandparents, I was also very close to my grandparents, Harold and Sylvia Barth. They lived at just up the mountain from us, on the Swissdale Mountain. And my mother's father, we called him Pop. I was fortunate to have my grandma Pap and my pop. Unfortunately, my mom's mother passed away actually when she was pregnant with me. So I never got to meet her. But I did have a great grandmother as well. We called her Mamaw. She was 97 when she passed away. So everything that I recall growing up, and I have two siblings. My sister Ashley is 4 years older than me. And then my brother Blake is 18 months to the day. He's November 8th. I'm May 8th. And I just recall everything in my early childhood and my growing up years as being very family oriented. I feel very blessed to have had that experience growing up. You asked if I was a music kid or a sports kid. My mother is very musically talented. I did not inherit those traits. I tried a few things, but I don't think I was very good at it. So I resorted to sports. My father was a coach in various capacities growing up. And I just always felt like I was at some sort of athletic event or field growing up, and played a lot of different sports growing up. And that was a big part of my childhood as well. And I also think it was a big part of shaping who I am today. So yeah, that was it in a nutshell, man. But I was a country kid, grew up, at the farm, at the barn. My family had horses. My grandparents had a big garden. And so I was either doing that or hunting, fishing, and playing sports. That's how I grew up.
Sounds pretty Norman Rockwell to a certain
Yeah.
extent. That's good. I always like to ask people that had kind of the same experience that you're talking about, and I was the same way. I was very close with all of my grandparents. We were always with them, and I like to ask people this question, looking back on it now. And we're going to talk more about your parents, but I want to ask you about your grandparents specifically. What did spending time with your grandparents do for you, looking at it now as an adult? What do you think they taught you without you actually knowing that you were being taught that at the time?
Oh, that's a great question. I think what I learned from my grandparents without realizing what I was learning at the time was how to appreciate things. My dad's parents, Harold and Sylvia Barth, they were, both Depression era. And my grandfather only went to school until eighth grade, and then he had to work on the farm. He was also a World War II vet. He was a POW in World War II. And he never told anybody anything about it. And that's a whole other thing we could talk hours about. We found a bunch of things after he had passed away. And just looking back on my time with my grandfather, I just realized what a humble human being he was. And he taught me work ethic and valuing things without coming out and saying it. I would just a lot of lead by example, like a humble, quiet man. But you could tell he was very proud of his family, very proud of things that they had accumulated as a family together. My grandmother and grandfather actually, I think they traveled to all 48, I'm sorry, 48 out of the 50 states in the US, which is a big deal to them. I mean, they grew up dirt floor poor, and to kind of come up through the American dream. And so I learned a lot of humility through them as far as just being grateful for what you have. And I think we had Sunday dinners at my grandma Pap's. Like that was, no matter what was going on, I felt like the world just was a lot slower then. And they cut time out, and it was just what you did after church on Sundays. You went there and you had a family meal together. And those are things that I will cherish forever. So they taught me those things. My grandfather, my mom's dad, Donald Frederick, I think I learned from him without realizing it, was civic duty. He was on Lock Haven City Council. He was always involved in his community. He was a Mason and those kind of things. And I didn't know the depths of those responsibilities, obviously, at a young age. But looking back on it, I just appreciate the time that he made for those kind of things. So just genuine, good people that love their
Yeah.
families.
It's awesome. I can echo a lot of what you said for me personally too. So Tyler grows up, goes to high school, and then decides, "What am I going to do after high school?" And you went the route of education. Tell us about that. I kind of think, given your background and knowing your parents, was it predetermined that you were going to be a teacher, or when did you come to that decision on your own?
So I didn't, and I think that's something we do a better job of in today's education realm, is explaining to kids and opening their eyes to opportunities. And I don't blame or fault anybody. I honestly, when I left high school, I was like, oh man, I guess I better figure out what I want to do. And I hadn't really put a lot of time or thought into that. And I guess in the back of my mind, maybe I always just thought, well, I'll just be what my parents were. But when I ended up graduating from Lycoming College. I went to Lycoming College in 2004, the fall there. I played football for Coach Girardi at Lycoming College. And I think also at that point in time, I was like, I want to pick a school that's good at football, and then whatever they have for academics, I go from there. And that was a little backwards looking back on it now. But when I went to Lycoming, I actually started out in political science, and I was going the pre-law route. And I had a professor there, Dr. Roskins, who worked for the CIA, and he spoke like 13 languages. And I had intro to poli sci, and I just remember at the end of that course, I was like, this isn't for me. This is way over my head, and this is just an introductory course. I better get the heck out of here. So I ended up actually at Lycoming. Education wasn't a major. It was a certification program. So my major was in psychology. And then I got my elementary teaching cert with that as well. So it was probably midway through my freshman year of college. I was like, you know what? I think I really want to check out education. And I started gearing my coursework towards that. And psychology played hand in hand with that. So it was a good match. And that's how I got into the realm of education. But you're right. I grew up, my parents were both teachers, and I was comfortable with that because I thought they were, excellent educators. So I felt like I had a good idea of what it would take. And so I felt comfortable with it and went on with that and graduated in 2008 from Lake Cumming with a BA in psychology and my elementary teaching cert.
So, full disclosure to listeners, my wife, the lovely Mrs. Maidenford, had Tyler's dad in elementary school. And, my wife is an educator as well, lifelong educator. And still to this day, your dad is her favorite teacher ever. And that encompasses college professors, high school, everything. So, I know that you probably had big shoes to fill in the sense of being Bob Barth's son and then becoming a teacher. I don't know if you ever felt pressure from because you ended up working in the same school district that your dad worked in. And did you? That was a question I've often wondered. So he has a very big presence, your dad, and he's well known and well respected. Do you carry a little bit of that weight on your shoulders, or is your dad? And I don't know your dad well enough to know. Was he like, oh, you're your own person. Don't my legacy's my legacy. You go do your thing.
Yeah, my dad is, he to me, he's a bigger than life person, but again, in a humble way. And he never put any kind of pressure on me in anything that way growing up, whether it was sports, academics, professionally. He just would always expect the best. Like, if that was the best you could do, then that's acceptable to me. And we never had a sit down. And one of the things I remember very early on, when I said, "Hey, I'm going to get into education," he told me two things that have stuck with me to this day. I actually have it here in my office. It's hanging up here behind me, the saying. But two things. He said, if you're going to get into education and stick around the area, live in a small town, he said, there's two things you need to remember. He said, people have to know how much you care before they care how much you know. Always stay humble that way. And then also, when you are walking down the street in downtown, you shouldn't have to cross the street for anybody. You should always be able to hold your head up, look those people in the eye, and have a smile and a wave with everybody you ever interact with. So those were the expectations that he kind of put in place for me. But it was never don't mess up my legacy type of thing. It was just and it was just, he was a good father. My mother's a great mother, and they just put expectations in front of us as kids that would work in any facet of life. So that was kind of how that worked out. And it's funny how things have evolved because they're still in the area. It used to be, hey, you're Bob's son, or hey, you're Elaine's son. And now the tide has changed a little bit, and they'll run into people and say, oh, you're Tyler's dad, or hey, you're Tyler's mom. So that's kind of how that has evolved. But I've always been cognizant of, you know, I represent more than just me. I represent my family and all that I do. And it goes back to my grandmother and grandfather and my great grandmother. We have that responsibility because your name carries a lot of weight, and you want to maintain a reputable name. And that's our responsibility, and hopefully pass that on to our children.
Yeah.
So that's how that's all transpired.
So you graduated from Lycoming and you're an elementary teacher. How many years were you in the classroom, elementary classroom?
I was in the classroom for 8 years.
Okay.
Um,
And then you decided at some point you wanted to move on to the next level. Talk to me about that. What made Tyler say, I think being a principal or getting into administration is where I belong.
Honestly, I think it had a little bit to do with some what I like to call professional ADHD. Um, I always felt like I worked really hard to provide a climate and culture within my classroom that was awesome for all students I had. And like I always felt comfortable and confident in what I was doing within the walls of my classroom. But in year 6, 7, 8, I kind of felt myself poking my head out the classroom door and be like, well, geez, I wonder what's going on in the rest of this building. Like, I wonder what's going on down the hall. I wonder how that person's doing, or I wonder what they're doing. And um, I always felt like I wanted to have as big an impact as possible. And again, I say that not to be arrogant, but I felt like some of my traits and leadership qualities could have a bigger impact in an administrative role. So that's kind of what drove that. And it was, my desire to try and impact as many people, both students and staff and families and communities as possible. And I felt like that was, it would have been easier to do outside of the classroom. So that's what kind of pushed me to get into administration.
Okay, so now we've turned that page, and this is where a lot of my questions that I had pre-planned for this interview come up. Now that you are currently the principal of an elementary school within the district that I work in Keystone Central School District, and how would you, just so our listeners get a feel, how would you describe the building that you run as far as Center City? What's the size? What kind of percentage? You got to give the elevator pitch. This is Robb Elementary.
Wow. That's a tall task because there's so much that goes into it. But what I would say, at a glance, Robb Elementary is a K-4 building. We have roughly 400 students that attend Robb Elementary, and from paraprofessional support staff to professional staff to outside agencies that work in the building. Any given day, we have about 80 to 85 staff members in our building. We're about 77% economically disadvantaged here for our student population. But and we're a very inclusive school. We have life skills, we have autistic support classrooms, and we have emotional support classrooms. We also have an outside agency that works here as a school-based behavioral health team. And we also have a student assistance program that's here to support students and provide resources outside of the school. So it's a very comprehensive school. We have ESL services here as well. So it's a very comprehensive school from that regard. But at the end of the day, the only way I can explain Robb Elementary is a family. And I mean that. It's not a cliche thing. like this place has, and I'm sorry, Doug, I know you don't work here, but we have the best staff in the district. I mean, I'll argue that with anybody, but no, I'm just so proud of, and that's not knocking any other building. I'm very proud of all of our buildings, and there's things that go on in each of our buildings that many people don't know anything about. But our family here at Robb are just, they're incredible people. They're resilient, because there's so much that goes into just educating these kiddos and loving these kiddos. And our motto here, that really stuck is, it came from Brad McCloskey. He's our facilitator here, phenomenal guy, in it for the right reasons. And we want every person in this building to feel seen, heard, and loved. So that's kind of been our approach with kids. So when you come to Robb Elementary School, you're going to walk in, and you're like, this place is different, and it's different for a good reason. So I'm super proud of this place.
Well, you have
Love
a
it.
lot. You have a lot to be proud of, and you made that sound so easy, but it's not that easy. And that was one of the questions I had for you because having had conversations with faculty members who work in your school or faculty members who have worked with you, the one thing that they constantly say is that you are able to build this environment that you just described. So that sounds, oh yeah, he built this environment, but I need to know how do you build that environment that you just made sound so easy? And I know it's not easy, but when you took over that building and that environment, maybe some of that culture was there, but I don't think it was the culture that you have brought to it. So my question to you is, how do you build and maintain a culture like what you're talking about?
Ooh, and again, I don't mean to deflect the question, but it's really not me. I guess maybe some of the things start with me. It has to be carried out and believed by those around you. So I think
Right,
you
right.
have to
No,
bring something to it.
you're absolutely right. They have, but you have to get them to buy in. You have to get your staff, the
Yeah.
kids, the community, the parents, and the buck stops with you. You're the principal. You're the head of that building.
Right.
How did you do that? Because you've done it, or at least it sure seems like you've done it.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. It's no, I think we have I think a lot of it comes back to marketing. Okay. Which is something when 15 years ago, when I got into education, you'd say education is going to be marketing is going to be a big part of it. Well, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But I think that it comes back to, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will, and it probably won't be accurate. So I think what comes with the culture is, and this is no knock on anybody that was here before or anything like that, uh, too often. And even when I taught in the district here before I left, went to Williamsport and came back, Robb Elementary was synonymous with like, oh, you work at Robb. I bet you that's so trying to change that narrative. And it starts in here in our building is, and you would just, it was my, I don't know, drive that even if I heard any of my staff make any kind of comment like that, I would just call them out on it. Be like, "What are you talking about? Why'd you say that?" And it wasn't like I was trying to be rude to them or demeaning, but like I'd be like, "We don't. What are you talking about? We don't talk like that." So you got to change the talk within your culture because then that ripple effect carries out into the community. And I'm constantly reminding our staff that people love to take things out of context. So be very careful what you're saying and where you're saying it, because you might have been telling a great story, but somebody took a tidbit of it and twisted it. And all of a sudden, Robb's back in that category of, oh, you wouldn't believe what happens there. But just carrying our school in a positive light, carrying each other in a positive light. And the other thing too, I'll be completely honest with you, is something I took from Dr. Calvin Watts. He's superintendent of Gwinnett County Schools in Georgia. It's a huge school district. It's a county system. One of the things he said was, those who call you out, call them in. So when people are, talking ill of our school or our community, our culture, I don't, and when you say call them out, it's not like, hey, what are you talking about, you jerk? It's when you call them out, say, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this. Can I please, let's sit down and talk. Let's have a conversation about this. And maybe I can shed some light on some things that might help you have a better understanding. So transparency, being real is a big part of it. I'm a human being. I'm a dad. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a human being at the end of the day, and I think my staff understands that. And just keeping my feet on the ground, and again, going back to the humility that was taught to me by my family. And my uncle Steve, my mom's brother, was a principal at North Penn High School in Lansdale. And he passed away. He had leukemia. But when I was getting my principal cert, I actually interviewed him, and it was awesome. And I didn't know he was, ill at the time. So I'm really glad I had that time with him. But one of the things he told me, because North Penn's a huge school, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but very big school. And he said visibility. He said, be visible. You go to sporting events, you go to concerts, you go to plays, you go to shows. You need to be visible, and then people will start to realize you really do care about this place. So, I think it does start with the buck does stop here, and if I can't just give lip service to people, I got to live it too. So, I think that's kind of what we do. But at the end of the day, it comes down to our staff and their ability to carry out what we believe.
All of us know that it is harder to be positive than to be negative. So how tiring is it? I mean, you're human. There has to be times where waking up in the morning and you got to put that happy face on and and honestly try to do it. I mean, how tiring is that? That's because you're holding the flag. And you have to be that first face that your faculty sees in the morning or, at some point during the day, and the kids have to see you. And you always have to be on, in my opinion, when you're trying to build. And now that you've built the culture, now you got to maintain it, which I think maybe even is harder because now is the easy part where you could say, oh man, I've done the hard work. Now I can sit back a little bit. Well, that's usually not the case. So how do you handle that aspect of the job? How do you maintain that positive facade's probably not the right word, but that positive face?
Um, Well, I think that's where I've been kind of blessed as just a characteristic of me. I've always been an optimistic person. I've always kind of been uh, a carefree. I don't want to say carefree, but one of those things. And maybe it's because of my faith base. I believe in the fact that everything happens for a reason. So I don't get too twisted up on things. And that's easy to say when things go well, but I also believe that when things don't go well. So I try not to get too twisted up in that. But honestly, the hardest part of that, maintaining that facade is, and it is exhausting because at the end of the day, we're responsible for, and I think I became more attuned to this when I had my own children. We are responsible for people's most precious cargo. Like that is a huge responsibility and it is exhausting. But at the end of the day, it's rewarding too. It's when you run into a parent at Walmart, and they say, "Hey, I just want to let you know how much I appreciate what you've done for my daughter or my son, and I can't get over what Rob does." Like those kind of things, they're like a boost, if you will. So like, and you're right, I'm human. There's times where and I guess as I'm getting a little older, I don't hide it as well as I may have before, and I'll have a staff member say, "Hey, what's wrong?" I'm like, "Oh crap, my face must be showing it." So it is exhausting, but I think the reward is what brings you out of the rut sometimes. And at the end of the day, we have a huge responsibility, but the reward is definitely what keeps you going.
What do you wish more people that have no contact with education, other than maybe, they went through the system or they have kids that have gone through the system, what do you wish more people knew about the role or job of a school principal?
Ooh. Um, it's funny because especially like the summer months, I'll be having a conversation with friends, whatever, and like, what do you do in the summer? Like what does a principal even do? And I'll have friends that have been, be in business, whatever. Like, what do you just like yell at kids? Like, what do you what do you do as a principal? So I guess for people that are out of touch with what a principal does and it has certainly evolved over the years, but I think what people don't realize is I'm almost, as a principal, I'm almost like a community care coordinator. So it's like, and then that's everybody from, trying to make sure your staff are staying healthy mentally, physically, to the students, to families, it's ultimately my job to make sure that our staff has everything they need to be successful. It's my job to make sure our students are getting the supports and services that they need to be successful. I also need to make sure that our families are getting the supports and services that they need to be successful. And I feel responsible to and obligated to meet the needs of our community, with businesses, realtors, like what are families talking to you about regarding the school system? What are their complaints? What are rumors you're hearing? Like, how can we mitigate some of these things that people are talking about? And they may not be true, but like, I just feel obligated and responsible to service and support A to Z. And I think that's probably one of the most overwhelming parts of being a principal is you're not just it's not just the students, whereas the students are obviously your primary focus. You're also responsible for supporting your staff, your families, and your community. So that's the part where it starts to get a little bit cumbersome.
Yeah, and for people outside of public ed or outside of ed as a whole, I don't think the average person truly understands, for us to be successful and for us as a society to be successful as well, it comes down to a lot of what you just talked about, and it all starts here with us, in those of us in the buildings, in the trenches, doing that work. And it isn't just teaching kids reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? It's way more than that. And I just don't think, I'm glad that you were able to, put into words a lot of things you just said, because I think it's valuable for anybody listening to this, whether they have ties to education or not. Just a friendly reminder that that stuff's all going on, whether you realize it or not. And if they're not going on, then you aren't having successful communities, you aren't having successful schools, you aren't having successful societies. So I was glad to hear you say that. And I guess that was one thing too. I was going to ask, now that you've been a principal for a little bit, is there anything that still surprises you about the job, that going into it, you never would have thought, oh, this is going to be something I have to do or deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I think every year something comes up where I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's funny. I started out as like I said, pre-law, and it's just the litigious world we live in. I think that's the part where I'm like, oh wow, and just and things, and I'm not saying they're good or bad, indifferently. Like, Wednesday, myself and our admin team sat through an 8-hour training on Title IX and just all the regulations that surround Title IX and the reporting requirements for that and the investigatory processes involved with those. So I think a lot of, and I'm intrigued by law. I think it's fascinating stuff, but I think that's probably things that keep coming up, and whether it's IDEA, 504s, those kind of things. Yeah, I'm always learning something new, and I think that's part of it that I like too. And I think that's why it's maintained my professional ADHD is there's never a dull moment.
That goes in the classroom too. Trust me, people. Not just the principal's office. All right, last question about shop, and then we're going to move on. Um, the profession has changed drastically in your career, as it has in mine. I'm going into year 23 now, and I think of what my job was like 20 years ago, what it was like 10 years ago, and what it was like 5 years ago, and it's constantly changing. I want you to look into your crystal ball, and where do you see public ed 5 years and 10 years from now, given the situations that we're in, teacher shortages, bus driver shortages, funding issues, increased mental health issues with kids? What do you see? Where do you see the future of public ed going 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Wow. I wish I had these questions ahead of time, Doug. You
No, it's
put
better. It
no,
makes you
it's
think. It makes you think.
it
Yeah.
does. And I guess and that's the other part too, when you say about people who aren't necessarily in tune with, education. When you say where's public ed in 5 and 10 years, my brain starts shooting in all different directions. Where is it at from a administrative lens? Where's it at from a classroom? Where's it at from a student standpoint? But I think ultimately where public ed is in 5 years, wow, I think we have to do in public education. There's certain things that we need to learn how to integrate rather than resist. And whether that's on the technology front, maybe whether that's on the political front, there's all these worlds that come together to create what is public education. I think in 5 years in public ed, I think that you'll see, and gosh, I just, this is Tyler Barth speaking. This is nobody else. I think that what's going to have to happen is the reality of it is that a lot of smaller areas, the budget is going one way and the revenue is going another. So I think honestly down the road, and maybe it's the 10 year, I think that you'll see some smaller independent school districts consolidate. I think that you'll see fewer school districts. I think there's like 530 some school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. So I think that you'll have to look at some of those mergers from a financial standpoint. And with that, obviously, I have apprehension and concern about the quality that can be provided when you get into a bigger system. But I think the reality of it is something has to change. We can't continue on the path that we're on. And I think that there's going to be a lot of competition, whether it's cyber charters, whether it's charter reform, whatever it might be, the push and the advocacy for school choice. And, there's a lot of things that will come into play. And it's kind of uncertain to me at this point. But what I do know is I'm very proud of what a public school system can do for all students and any student. It doesn't matter where you're from. Doesn't matter what your pocketbook looks like. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. Public education is really a fascinating thing when you look at it as a whole. So I think that we're going to be fine. I think that it's going to look different, and what is different, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, you're right. I've been thinking a lot about this last couple years as things could change faster and faster. And you brought up some very good points, and I think some of those things probably will happen because they're going to be forced to. The market's going to make it happen. But like you said, what it's actually going to look like, well, who knows? We don't know what the end of this next school year is going to look like. So, let alone
And I
five
think
or
the other
ten
thing
years down the
too
road.
is from a local standpoint, what's tough is like when you start looking at, globally, what does public ed look like? Here in Keystone Central, we're such a unique entity in the fact that we're 900 square miles. So when you start to look at school choice and things like that, well, you could have a kid that lives in, Kettle Creek and, school choice. If they choose to go to Woodward Elementary, it's not like it's a 5 minute ride, or a walk. There's a whole factor involved there that's pretty unique to where we live. And Jersey Shore, I think, is like the third largest geographic district in the state. So some of those unique challenges will be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're going to see more tech and more distance learning. I think is going to be another big thing in the future too. But anyway, that's enough shop. I was really happy to pick your brain on some of those things because those are things I've been thinking about. as I continually hear the praises of Tyler Barth in my hallway and among faculty members. So I just wanted to get that side of your brain a little bit. But we're done talking shop. So I close every interview out with 10 quick questions that I ask all my guests that have nothing to do with anything we talked about already. It's more of an opportunity to get to know Tyler a little bit better. So
All
are
right,
you ready? 10 quick questions. Here we go.
let's do it.
Don't even think about them. You're going to be fine.
All right,
Question number one. What's your morning drink of choice?
coffee with cream.
Are you a big coffee drinker? Like you drink coffee all day
Coffee
or
all day. 9 o'clock at night doesn't matter. I'm
you
I'm a coffee all day guy.
we are cut from the same cloth, my friend. We are cut from
Yes.
the same cloth. Okay, I'm curious about this one. Number 2, who is a go-to musical artist or group for you?
Oh wow. I have an eclectic go
You
to.
can give more than one, but yeah, I mean,
So right now I'm a Zach Bryan fan. Luke Combs, but I also love like Bruno Mars, Pink. Like it goes all over the place. Steven Wilson Jr. is a country artist that's just fascinating to me.
so you had
But
a rough day. You had a rough day at work. You get in the car. You're on your way home. You crank the radio. What song are you playing?
get
Or
in
what
the car,
artist?
crank the radio. Oh man. Like if I'm gonna just like have an angry moment, I don't know. I'm probably gonna put on like Bush and play Glycerine, like something, I don't know.
That's a
But if
great
I'm
answer.
just like loving life, having a great time, I'm gonna put like Nico Moon, a Bruno Mars. And the other thing too I love is like when artists that you don't typically expect get together and collaborate on something. I love playing those things like Justin Timberlake and Chris Stapleton
Yeah.
together. I'm a big Teddy Swims fan. I like to think that I was on to Teddy before he got huge. He's a phenomenal voice, but I also love like Journey, and I just music as a whole is just definitely a big part of my life.
Yeah.
Listening to it, I'm not a
Sure.
great singer, but
No, that's all
I'm
right.
not I'm not an artist like you. I can't play instruments and that kind of thing, but love music.
That's great. Good answers. Question number 3. What movie can you watch over and over again and it never gets old?
I mean, I don't know if it's what anybody's looking for, but Tommy Boy.
No,
I
it's a
think
great.
Tommy Boy is a movie I could watch over and over and over again. And I think I did at one point in life, watched it over and over again. So Tommy Boy.
Yeah,
And the other
great
one was
answer.
Con Air. I don't
Oh,
know why.
Con Air.
I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good. All right. What is the last thing that you read?
Do audiobooks count?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually just I'm 8 hours into a 10-hour listen. It's called The Anxious Generation. Um, and it's an incredible book. It's very eye-opening and very relevant to what we do. And it talks about the rewiring of brains and how our children are now what they call phone-based or screen-based childhood versus a play-based childhood. And a lot of it reverts back to 2010 as a big year of the transition. So it's by Jonathan Haidt, and it's about the rewiring of childhood, and it's called The Anxious Generation, and it's very insightful. So
Hmm.
it's an awesome read and or listen, but yeah, it's very fascinating.
That's got me worried now thinking about that. But yeah, no, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Okay, question number 5. What is your favorite pizza topping?
Pizza. I'm gonna say like a spicy sausage.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 6, laying on the beach or going for a hike?
Boy, I tell you what, it would have been the hike, but the last couple of years, just sitting at the beach. I mean, we were just in the Outer Banks last 2 weeks ago, and I got to tell you, it's a newfound peace for me. So I'm gonna go laying on the beach. But I hate getting sand in my shoes or anything like that. So that part I'm still working through. But if I can sit down in like a little chair down by where the waves are hitting your feet and it's not really like sand blowing around, I'm in 100%.
Okay, sounds good. Number 7, you have invited me over for dinner. What are you cooking?
I'm gonna make a chicken parm.
Okay. Are you a cook? Do you like to cook?
I do like to cook. Um, And I'm not anything fancy. But yeah, I like to cook, and I'd probably go with a chicken parm.
I'll eat chicken parm. That sounds good. All right, number 8. Dream vacation destination.
Oh, dream vacation destination. Would a hunting trip count?
Absolutely. Sure.
All right. I'd probably like to go kill a moose. I'd like to go on a moose hunt. Maybe Saskatchewan or something like that. Some frigid temps. Some rustic conditions to hang out in like a canopy tent. And I think that would be awesome with my dad, my brother, a couple close friends. I think that
Yeah.
would be pretty good deal.
Yeah, that sounds good. Number 9. What is something you're afraid of?
Wow. At the surface level, I don't appreciate a undetected snake that I come across when I'm out fishing or hunting, but I think a little deeper than that is um, being a father. I think my greatest fear is one day not being there for my kids. So I guess physical death, but again, going back to my faith, I know what's awaiting me, but just not physically being there for my kids, and hopefully I can be around until they get to be adults and they can figure it out on their own. But being 6 and 10 now, that's my biggest fear.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, last question. What job, other than one that you've had, would you love to have?
I started out pre-law. I think it would be pretty awesome to be an attorney. Um,
I thought you were going to say like a hunting guide somewhere out in
you
in the
know,
Rockies.
I think about that, but then like every year after like 3 days of like hoofing it all over the hills of Pennsylvania on a good whitetail hunt, I'm like, I don't think I could do this like 200 days out of the year. Like, I don't think I'm cut for that. Maybe when 12, 15 years ago, but now, no.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, an attorney. Well, maybe, man, maybe. You never know, right?
I think it's too late. I think that ship has sailed, man. But
Maybe. Well, Tyler, I just want to take a moment to thank you for, of course, doing the podcast, but speaking as someone that is still in the classroom. I have worked for many, many administrators over my career. Some have been really good, some have been not so good. No names, nothing like that. But I know good when I see it. And even though I've never had the pleasure of working for you, my wife got to work for you, and she sings your praises, and many other people do too. So I just want to thank you. I don't know if you hear it enough, but you probably don't. But I want to thank you for doing what you're doing, because you are creating an environment, and you have created an environment that people want to come to and experience. And there's a lot of people in education that would kill to work in environments like that. So congrats for all of your success, and I wish you and your building continued success. And I know it's going to be there because I know the person at the top. So congratulations. Thank you so much, Tyler. You're doing great work. Keep up the great work. And thanks for coming on the show.
you bet. And I'd like to echo that sentiment. I know we never worked together, but I know that you're very involved, and I know I appreciate what you do with student government, and I know you're teaching kids about life outside of just the topic you're teaching. So kudos to you. And like I tell my staff here, teaching is one of the hardest things in the world to do. I think like we talked about musicians, and they talk about the drudgery of how hard it is to go on tour and perform. Well, teachers are on stage for 180 days a year, and it's getting harder and harder to maintain the focus and attention of our students. So hats off to you, man. I appreciate what you're doing, and thanks for having me today.
Well, thanks, Tyler. All right. Take care.
We'll see you.
Thank you for listening to Doug's Front Porch, a conversational podcast with your host, Doug Maidenford. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. 5 stars only, please. Follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just look for Doug's Front Porch. Also, please feel free to tell all of your friends about the show, and I'll see you all next time on my front porch.